afternoon. The regular meeting of the Southern Shores Town Council for September the 1st, 2015 is now in session. Can you hear me? It's working, I think. Let's just double check it.
Tap it. Yep, it's working.
I'll just talk a little closer to it. Does that help any? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Council, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's made and carried. Thank you. Before I address a request for a motion to approve the consent agenda, I'd like to ask Leo if he has a question he'd like to have answered.
Yes, Ben, you may or may not know the two contractors, Barnhill Construction and RPC, are customers of a company I work for, James River Equipment, and I don't get any commission on any of the sales. I'm a consultant only. I have no ownership and have no stock in the companies, nor am I affiliated with any one of with Barnhill or RPC. So I just kind of like to have your thoughts of, do I have a conflict or don't I?
Mr. Holland, I don't believe you do. And I think that under the statute, you've got a duty to vote if you don't have a conflict. The statute that applies requires a direct conflict or a direct financial interest, and you wouldn't have that, particularly being a secondary customer, representative for somebody who is not even contracting with the town.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Having determined that, I would now ask councils for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The consent agenda has been approved. At this time, I'd call on the town manager to discuss item 3 under the contract approval for street improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on the council's approval of the street projects in July of this year, staff did put 3 streets out to bid for rebuild: Hollow Beach Court, Bear Track Court, and North Dogwood Trail, a segment of that. And because these were the first ones of the year under that project approval, I did want to bring them to you. I was ready to execute the contracts as approved, but I wanted to show you the bids and, of course, announce the bids in public. These were put out as informal bids, and the lowest responsible bidder was determined to be RPC Contracting, Inc. at $189,300. The next highest was Barnhill Contracting at $191,736. And both of those bids came well within our maximum projections at the budget projections. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those. We'll proceed ahead with those.
Does these contracts have the new language we've talked about, paying on percent
Yes,
completed, and as well as not making the final payment till all the punch items are done?
They do, Councilman Holland. Both of those items are now as part of our contract format.
Okay, thank you.
They are.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Leo. This time, I'll open the meeting to general public comment. Fred Newberry. Good afternoon, Fred.
Thank you. I'm Fred Newberry. I live on North Dogwood Trail, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the Facebook page that the town has. As you all know, Facebook is a great means of communicating, and it's good for keeping up with family and friends, and a lot of us use it quite extensively, and if it wasn't for Facebook, we probably wouldn't know what was going on as much as we do now. Businesses used it to their advantage as well. They use it for advertising. They use it to reach out to their customers. There's interaction going back and forth, and that's a good thing for business. Governments use it at the federal, state, local level. And same there, they use it to communicate with their residents, and it gives them an opportunity to get a pulse on the town of what's going on. And it's not a bad idea to use it. It's a real good way to communicate, much better than just web pages because it's interactive. I did a little research. It's pretty simple. I kind of looked at all of the Facebook pages in the local jurisdictions on the Outer Banks, which included Nags Head, Kill Devil Hills, Kitty Hawk, Duck, and of course our Southern Shores. And one thing I noted about all of the other Facebook pages is that they allowed their citizens to see each other's comments, and in some cases the town even replied to some of the comments. Didn't see that with Southern Shores. We don't get to see each other's comments. Now, I understand that you got to be careful with some of the comments because they're vulgar. People use bad language. They say things that are inappropriate, and none of us want that. So you have to moderate them, no doubt about it. But I guess it kind of comes down to this. I just wonder why Southern Shores is the only town on the Outer Banks that doesn't allow its citizens to see other citizens' comments. And there's no dialogue. It's all one-way communications. And the communications from the citizens to the town is kind of in a tunnel that no one else can see. And so I just want to ask the question, why is it that way? All the other towns seem to find that the two-way open communications is a good thing. And I think it'd be good for Southern Shores, so I thought I'd ask the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. I see no one else has signed up, so at this time, I'd like to close public comment, or I will close public comment. Staff reports, our town planner, Wes Haskett.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I have a brief report for you tonight. For the month of August, there were 5 zoning permits issued, 21 building permits issued, and that consisted of 4 new single-family dwellings, 2 remodels and repairs, 1 repair, 2 additions, 1 remodel addition, and 11 others. There are currently 11 single-family dwellings under construction in the town, and the total amount of fees collected in August was $14,518.95. With respect to code enforcement, there were 4 warning citations mailed during the month of August. Those were 2 right-of-way obstructions, 1 flood violation, and 1 accumulation of rubbish, trash, or junk causing or threatening to cause a fire hazard. And lastly, with respect to this month's planning board meeting, there is a ZTA zoning text amendment application that's been submitted by the Southern Shore Civic Association for a vegetation and tree removal ordinance. That is on the September 21st Planning Board meeting agenda. The notices and everything will be going out, local newspaper, Facebook, biweekly newsletter, and all the information will be posted on the town's website as soon as possible once those notices are prepared. Any questions?
No?
Council? Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
Just a minute. Do you report on the Board of Adjustments activity?
Well,
Well,
they
what's
did
part
meet
of the planning
They
board?
did meet in the, this past month as well. I think the planning board chairperson is going to give the report on
Oh,
that
okay.
during his report, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Okay, great. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry, Leo.
That's all right.
David Cole, our police chief. Good evening, David.
David?
Mayor, members of council, August 2015 monthly report. As you can see, we had 1,091 calls for service. It's actually an increase of 389 calls for service compared to last August.
Wow.
One of the most significant is we've had quite a few suspicious condition calls regarding rental houses that we've had a lot of break-ins, and we'll be announcing a couple of arrests within the next couple of weeks on those. Just a little bit of a breakdown on those calls for service. There was 163 of those were traffic stops. And then as you can see, we responded to 17 alarm calls along with the 43 suspicious conditions. Direct traffic, mutual aid to other agencies, 17 of those. Residence checks, conducted 59 of those, and then another 216 business checks. Just a breakdown of our incidents, which were our actual reported crimes. As you can see, we had 46 of those. Some of those, as far as breaking down the CSA, those are all drug violations. There were 7 of those.
Ouch.
We had 1 DWI. And then as far as our criminal arrest, we arrested 2 for assault, 1 for a weapons violation, and 2 regarding drug violations. We had a total of 11 motor vehicle accidents in August. It was a heavy motor vehicle accident month for us. Officers handed out of all those 163 traffic stops, they handed out 51 written citations and another 49 warning citations. And our officers, along with the community service officer, handed out 56 ordinance violations. Any questions?
How many were those resident versus guest?
For
For which one?
Well, one was traffic stops.
the traffic stops, I can tell you that I don't have the exact numbers, but pretty close to 35 to 40% of those were local.
What about the drug?
Local.
Yes.
What about the drug arrest? How many were residents? Or?
One of those was a visitor from north, and the other one was a local. Yes, sir.
I have a question, David. I noticed there's a lot of like those traffic counter tubes across the streets, and I looked maybe some of them from state. Are we going to be able to see any results of what those traffic counts are?
Well, we're hoping. We just purchased 2 new traffic counters, and we've been in touch with DOT, and they've had the same problems. We're going to have some pretty good hard numbers, but they're not. Part of the problem with these counters, and DOT has had the same problem, is that on the weekends, you have to be going at least a minimum of 8 to 10 miles an hour, even for the tubes to count. The other problem is if a vehicle is sitting on one of the tubes, it will not count anything coming back and forth on the other lane. We've been in touch with the company, and we're hoping that we've rectified that, but we'll have some fairly decent numbers, but not what we were hoping for. And DOT has had the same problem. They've had counters out here. Theirs are a little bit more sophisticated, and they've got the wireless antennas, but they're having the same problem. And they have a new counter out there that we were looking at, very expensive, and it's actually a laser, and the same problem, that the vehicles are under 8 miles an hour, 10 to 8 miles an hour, it will not count them. So to be honest with you, the only real accurate way to sufficiently do it is to have someone out there actually count them. I've asked the fire department if they'd like to have a boot and maybe do a little fundraiser out there and count traffic at the same time, but we're still in discussions of that.
With that fallacy in mind, is the DOT looking to compare further up the road so that they can say when the traffic stops or where the...
Well, I'm not sure what they're doing. What we've done is we have a counter which is working just fine on South Dogwood. So that'll give us all of our traffic on South Dogwood. Then we have another counter out here near before Chickahawk. And then we have another one that is just north of Coat/13th Street, so that we get everything coming in from both ways, and then we'll have
And when you say
pretty
we have,
decent-
you mean those are our counters?
Those are our counters,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I just didn't know if DOT was doing anything
Yeah,
further.
they
to
had
it.
theirs out there for a little while, and then they took theirs down. So ours are still up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David. The reports I'm hearing from the other towns, as well as what we're seeing here, is that the last 2 weeks in July and the first 3 weeks really in August were some of the most busy weeks we've had in probably 5 to 7 years. Just more traffic than we really even thought about having this summer. Just big numbers. Getting some feedback from people about the travel time from Currituck to the Outer Banks. That's being addressed at the county level. We do have a meeting scheduled, I think, mid-October, Peter?
Yes.
To go over, meet once again with the same parties that met this past winter to talk about the traffic issues. Dare County commissioners, Currituck County commissioners, and of course the town managers and town mayors from the local towns that are impacted, Kitty Hawk, Duck, and Southern Shores primarily, as well as people from NCDOT and Malcolm Fearing, who's basically our liaison person with NCDOT for the Outer Banks. So we're going to look at what we did that turned out okay and what didn't turn out well, and we can see what we can do to make improvements and see if we can make it better than it is. Try to make as many improvements as we can to it. Sorry, Ed, you're up. Ed Limbacher, our fire chief. Good evening.
Hey, Ed.
I found it actually interesting today that Chief Cole noted the steep rise in calls for service, because I actually noted that myself. For us, we were at nearly 80, 78 calls, which for us is 30 calls more a month from last year, which we were in the 50. So I don't know if that's going to be a trend that continues. I mean, that can get overbearing for volunteers. So I thought it was interesting that he noted the increase in call volume also. But just a quick breakdown. 1 building fire, 1 vehicle fire, 1 grass fire, 1 over pressurized, which actually was a hot water tank that split. 54 EMS calls, 2 motor vehicle accident with injuries, 2 motor vehicle accident versus pedestrian, 2 lost children, which were found prior to us getting there, so it was pretty quick. I think someone panicked, but that's fine. I'd rather do that than not find them. So 1 surf rescue, 1 gas leak, which was LP, 1 vehicle accident, which is general cleanup, 3 service calls, an unauthorized burning. Someone called and said it wasn't, but it actually was. They had all the hose and the stuff that you're supposed to have according to the law. 3 smoke detectors due to malfunctions, which were batteries. 1 alarm, which was actually unintentional, which was a smoke in the building from cooking. And 2 lightning strikes with no fire. So the total was 78 this month, which, like I said, I noted the increase myself. So I'm just wondering if that's, summer's just about over, so our numbers should drop off. Typically, we run 30 to 35 calls a month, so we'll just see what happens next month.
Any questions, Council?
Nope, I don't have any.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Chief, appreciate it. Item 4, reports from the town boards. Our planning board, Sam Williams, is here tonight. Evening, Sam.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. Brief report this evening. At our last planning board meeting, we had to elect officers for the year. I was elected chair, and Gray Berryman was elected vice chair. And I believe the first item under new business is the approval of that, if you so desire. The second thing that I wanted to mention was the variance that was asked about. It was the first time that the planning board has acted as the Board of Adjustments since we combined the 2 actions under the planning board. As you know, it's a quasi-judicial hearing, and we had a number of procedural questions and issues, and we managed to work it out with the assistance of both the town's attorney and the applicant's attorney. So we did make sure that we covered all the things that had to be covered, conflict of interest to the board members, and all the other niceties that go along with the procedures. The issue was an unpermitted deck built on a non-conforming structure. It was 78 Spindrift Trail. And the request was for some relief from the requirement to remove the deck. The town had told the applicant that the deck must be removed. The deck not only was in violation because it added on to a non-conforming structure, It violated the 15-foot side setback and violated the old 10-foot setback. So after a good bit of discussion, the board voted to deny the variance request. The decision document has been sent to the applicant, and if the applicant so desires, they can appeal to Superior Court. One of the things I wanted to mention was this meeting on the variance had to be delayed for 1 month due to the lack of a quorum. We have 5 members on the planning board to act as a board of adjustments. 1 member was absent. We did not have any alternates to fill in, and it was up to the applicant to decide whether they wanted to go with a 4-member board, which meant that they had to get approval from all 4 members. With a 5-member board, you need 80%, which is 4 members to voting in the positive. So I would recommend that when on the agenda, when it comes up to the voting on the alternates for the planning board, that you approve that so we don't run into that sort of situation again. The last thing I wanted to mention was the one that Wes mentioned on this clear-cutting and vegetative setback zoning text amendment. It will be considered at our next meeting, our September meeting on September 21st. And it's the second clear-cutting zoning text amendment to be considered by the board since April. So there's a good deal of interest out there. And I had heard that there might be another one waiting to be submitted, but it has not been submitted yet. Do you have any questions?
Sam?
Yes.
How long does that violation have to be satisfied? What kind, is there a time frame on the deck?
It just has to be.
If they don't appeal it, is there a?
If they don't appeal it, how long do they have to?
We didn't give them a deadline, but if they don't appeal, the 30 days expired, and we'll consider what time frame to give them.
Okay. Thank you.
You want a motion from us to approve the,
That's under.
your election and Gray's election to the,
Yes, when it gets to that part of the agenda.
yes, got it.
Okay.
Council, can I ask for a motion?
Well, it'd be under new business, isn't it?
It's under new
It's
business.
under new business,
I'm sorry, you're right. We'll do it in a new business. I
Which
got
is-
ahead of myself.
which will be next anyway.
Thank you, Sam. At this time, I'd like to introduce Pat Wilson. Pat's the chairperson for our Task Force Selection Committee for the Dogwood Trails, East and South Dogwood. Pat,
Thank you. The selection committee has met 3 times. This afternoon was our last meeting. And we had 36 applications. And each member evaluated each application with a simple score set between 1 and 5. So the high score would be 30, and the low score would be 6. No applicants scored a 30, and no applicants scored below 11. The committee has chosen to interview at least 16 people, all scoring between 21 and 29. From that, we will choose 9 in the categories designated by the council. We expect the interview process to begin this Friday at 4:30, and we hope to finish and make our final decisions by the end of September. I am confident that we will be able to put together an excellent task force representing a broad cross-section of town citizens. I want to thank Sheila and Cynthia Mills for their accurate minutes. It's been a great help to the committee to have that done for us. The committee's worked hard and diligently, and I think you'll have a task force by the end of September.
Fantastic.
Any questions?
Nope.
Sounds good.
Nope, I don't
We're
have
going to
any.
start interviewing on Friday, and we have three sessions set up to interview in the next couple of weeks. Okay?
Thank you, Pat. I want to thank you and your committee members for the job they're doing. It's an arduous task, I know, and I appreciate
Not
it.
so bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Any old business, council?
I have none.
Now I can get back to where I was a while ago. We need a motion to approve the planning board officers, Sam Williams and Gray Berryman.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's made and carried. Sam, congratulations to you and Gray. Appreciate your service. Council committee reports. The planning committee, Mayor Tim Jody Hess.
Okay, the planning committee met on Monday, August the 17th. We went over a number of items this particular meeting, and most of them were kind of getting updates as to where the status of where things were. The first subject we discussed was to do the status of what I call the paper streets, which have to do with the properties across from the crossovers in Chickahawk. And the town manager briefed the committee on the fact that, how do you pronounce it, Bodie Knoll?
Body Knoll.
Body Knoll.
Body Knoll.
Okay, the enterprises that own the properties, what they're planning on doing is they've got a few of these streets left. I mean, I call them streets because they're paper streets, excuse me, properties left. And they're making arrangements to grant access easements to the Chickahawk Property Owners Association, which is what their concerns were. They've been used now already for access, so they're in the process of working for that. There is one potential or prospective buyer to one of the buildings, and the town planner is working with them to make sure that they go through the processes necessary to prepare it for a permit if that's what ends up happening. The next subject that we discussed had to do with this new law that was passed with regards to housing, which said you cannot tell or designate the number and types of rooms in a house. And a few years back, when we developed our ordinance, it was on the basis of 7 bedrooms, 14 occupants, or 14 septic tank users, if you will, is the way they look at it. And that was the way we were controlling these really, really large houses from being built in the town. So we can't do that any longer, but we can leave the number of occupants. So we're going into the process to do something with the ordinance to work through the occupancy space. Excuse me, my throat's a little rough tonight. The next thing we discussed had to do with this initiative for offshore drilling. People have asked us why we have not submitted a resolution one way or the other. And we discussed it quite a bit, including the governor's desire to have revenues from the leases, which, quite frankly, if we do anything like that, we certainly want to see the towns get a piece of that if that's what comes about. But what the planning committee decided that is there's a lot more information out there to be achieved before we take a positive stand one way or the other. There's no for, there's no against at this point. It's more still a learning. So that's the way the committee came out on that particular subject. The next subject also deals with one that Sam mentioned tonight, which had to do with the zoning text amendments for vegetation, trees, and what have you. And at the time we held the meeting, there were no new applicants for that particular item. There has been since, as Sam mentioned, and that'll be on the September 21st planning meeting. We also talked then with the town planner with regards to if you remember in our budget, we approved working on our code to bring it up to date, to modernize the whole town's code. The town planner reported that his request for proposals for a planning firm has been transmitted, and 3 proposals had been received, all within the amount of the money that we budgeted for this project, which is always nice to hear. Of the 3, based on qualifications, he has selected Code Right Planners for further negotiations on the contract. And the request, if you recall, the request for proposal had been submitted to us before we ever actually sent it out to the businesses. And even though this is out of order of our meeting, I made it last deliberately because of our next item, and that had to do with fulfilling the members of the alternates for the planning committee. And we did discuss that subject, and one of the reasons it was delayed, which caused the variance committee problem, was because we were looking for people to volunteer and getting people to volunteer for on the committee. So the town manager and the staff had put out requests using both the town's website and the town's email newsletter, and they have received 2 applications. So that we discussed the knowledges of the discussions, residencies and their qualifications, and we agreed with the planning board, which would in effect say that we would recommend to the council, which we want to do tonight, that we would nominate Joe McGraw as alternate member number 1 and Karen Sykes as planning board alternate member number 2. So that was basically the subjects we covered for the meeting. Any questions or?
Do we have to nominate Joe and Karen, or?
Yes, that comes on our, I'll turn that back over to
Okay.
Tom for approval. Their resumes, their applications are in your planning book under type tab 2, right?
I need a motion, council, to appoint Joe McGraw and Karen Sykes to the planning board as alternates.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Jody. Any discussion? Both these people are longtime residents of Southern Shores, have been very much involved in our community, and from my perspective, quite respected.
Yeah.
Any,
Just a comment, I worked with Joe on the CPOA. He was the CPOA properties manager and was involved in redoing the Turtle Pond Bridge. So he's very well qualified.
yeah, very, very respected guy. Any questions? I need a vote. Call for a vote, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Thank you. Motion's made and carried. David, you have a Public Safety Committee meeting report?
Yes. Our Public Safety Committee meeting took place 10 a.m. yesterday. That was August 31st. Those attending were Mayor Bennett, myself, Chief Cole, Chief Lindbacher, Surf Rescue Director Mark Dabrowski, Public Works Director Rachel Patrick, and Town Manager Peter Asco. We also had a member of the public present, and that was Albert Yearling. The meeting agenda consisted of 4 items. Number 1 was end of summer briefing on beach operations by Myrick, review of summer traffic data collection procedures by Chief Cole, an update on the consideration of traffic signage, townwide needs, and that was presented by Chief Cole and Rachel Patrick. And number 4 were other matters timely and important. The meeting was called to order by Mayor Bennett, who announced the agenda order would be shifted. Myrick was detained, and so we had to put his presentation at the back of the meeting. Chief Cole, reporting on the summer traffic data collection procedures, pretty much covered that previously in discussion, so I'm going to skip that part of the minutes, with the exception that he did report that there were a larger number of vehicles using other side streets than normally used, presumably due to the apps on smartphones and tablets that people were using to try to negotiate around the impossible, which is the traffic on NC 12. He also reported on the department's ongoing evaluation of traffic sign needs at all locations in town to make traffic violation determination easier for his officers. Chief Cole requested that the stop bars be placed at the other 2 locations at East, South, and North Dogwood. We had one there on East Dogwood, and Rachel indicated that she was prepared to do that. Let's see. Staff members and committee members also talked about the ongoing evaluation of the necessity of other existing stop signs, including stop signs at South Dogwood and Mallard Cove Loop, stop signs at East Dogwood Trail at Hickory, and stop signs on South Dogwood Trail at Yopon Trail. No decisions were really made at this point. And finally, Myrick was able to get to the meeting And he reported that summer rescue activity had been mild this season. He felt it was due to the press reports about the southeastern U.S. and North Carolina regarding sharks, and that people did not go as deep in the water as normal. We also had different, other than normal conditions here. This is one year where I don't believe I've seen so few red flag days. To get back to the report, there were some recent rescues, one in Duck, one in Southern Shores, and he attributed that to the changing conditions. We're more back into a normal type of weather condition. He also reported that the dynamics of the changing beach widths had made it difficult for emergency vehicles to transit this year, which kind of segued into a portion of the meeting that I spoke about. And what I was reporting was my observations of the area between 180 and 192 Ocean Boulevard, which at different times this spring and summer, with the extreme high tides, there really is no beach. It goes right, there's actually an escarpment in that area right now that I noticed this morning was starting to modify a little bit. Sometimes these areas appear and sometimes they just fill back in and go away. But back in the spring, and I noted that there were a couple of items there that I'd never seen before, which one was a group of pilings that were exposed by 1.5 to 2 feet and a concrete slab. So in 30 years, I've never seen anything like that in that area. And in fact, Mark indicated he'd never seen them before either. So the erosion there has been very bad, but it may modify. We're keeping an eye on it. Let's see. Peter brought up the fact that while we were talking about that, about the tapering that's going to be done by Kitty Hawk, which will extend in front of Pelican's Watch about 1,000 feet. So there's some extra sand that's going to be pumped up onto the beach there. Mayor Bennett asked the town staff about the history of speed limits on Ocean Boulevard and Duck Road. He'd had a request from a member of the public regarding, again, could we reduce the speed to 35 miles an hour? Chief Cole and Peter both reported that the matter has been settled by NCDOT 3 years ago when the town council requested a year-round reduction of the speed limit. NCDOT replied then that it would not lower the limit year-round from 45 to 35 on NC-12, but would only lower it during summer months. There being no need to lower the speed limit during summer months due to slower traffic volume or higher volume slow traffic, the town council decided then to make no further request to NCDOT. Mayor Bennett also asked town staff about NCDOT protocol for approving and installing more crosswalks along NC Highway 12, and Peter explains their policy of not installing crosswalks unless there is a sidewalk or concrete on each side of the street. In other words, they would not establish a crosswalk where you're going from a path or sidewalk over to a street. It has to be, again, to another sidewalk, which at the crossovers we have improved sidewalks. Let's see here. Chief Limbacher reported this department had a busy summer. He also reported the results of a recent ratings inspection. They had a insurance rating inspection, and he said that the results of that would be available in 45 to 60 days. He seemed rather upbeat about it. Town manager reported the Tall Pine Bridge replacement project was now in the bid process. And the Public Works Director reported that the bridge closure date is now estimated at October 15th. The committee made no recommendation to the full council. There being no further business, the meeting was adjourned. After adjournment, Mayor Bennett invited questions of committee members and staff from the attending public. Albert Yearling thanked Chief Cole and his department for their presence at the Dogwood Trails intersection during Saturday traffic and offered continued use of his driveway for that purpose. And Chief Cole acknowledged Mr. Yearling's thanks and stated that the first 2 traffic citations were issued to local drivers. That's the end of the report.
Thank you, David. Anybody have any questions for David?
No, I don't have any.
Going back just for a second to the conditions on the beach, that's of some concern to us, as you can imagine, but we've had a hot spot there in that same area that David described for a number of years. It shifts a little bit north and south, and generally tends to heal itself, but not as quickly this year as it. We'll see what the fall and winter bring. The Pelican Watch area has been an ongoing issue for at least 5 years, maybe longer. The Kitty Hawk Beach Nourishment Project, when it's implemented, should help alleviate some of the problems at Pelican Watch and get some sand back there, so it gives them some beachfront. Anything else, Council?
Nope.
Town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I have 4 items to cover tonight in the manager's report. First, happy to announce again that the time is here for the annual Throwdown North of Town Charity Surfing Tournament. Both the town and Southern Shores Volunteer Fire Department will participate this year as stakeholders. The event starts early, 7 o'clock in the morning at Chickahawk Turnout. The board of that group has been working hard for the last 6 months to organize the event, and this year it will be catered towards those younger than 18 because of the number of participants. So it's already a sellout in most of the heats, and we look forward to that big day on Saturday, September 12th. With the lifeguard service, the active stands will be up through next Monday, Labor Day, the 4 stands. After that, our beaches will be guarded by ATV roving lifeguards through the end of September. And then through the end of October, Surf Rescue will continue to answer calls on the beach. So up till November 1, they'll be active in response, in beach response. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned a while ago about the October business meeting that staff and some of the representatives from the elected boards will attend with DOT, Duck, Kitty Hawk, Currituck, and Dare. And of course, the purpose of that is to critique what worked this summer with regards to traffic, what didn't work, and any new ideas. And this is a continuation of that same business meeting series that was held in the spring. Lastly, I'm happy to announce to the council that the Fletcher Family Trust has made another generous donation to the town's general fund. This donation will cover continued cost, some of the original costs for the town's new flagpole and Veterans Garden, and it'll also be for beautification of some of the high-traffic street right-of-ways. So I thanked the trustee, Scott Fletcher, and we will be doing that in writing, but Scott Fletcher of Chickahawk is the trustee for that trust, and this is the second donation that they have made to the town's general fund. So thank you, and I'll be glad to try to answer any questions.
I have a question for you that's not one of the subjects you brought up, but David reminded me of it from the Safety Committee. As we get ready to go for the Tall Pine Bridge work that's going to be going on, are you at a point where what your plans are going to be into announcing to people how they turn, where they're going to go, directions early on? I'm sure you're going to have some special things.
Yes, there is a detour/signage package and component in the contract that will be let. And once we get the contractor ready to go and ready to sign, we'll be having a specific meeting for that, and they will be setting up the sign package for that.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Any other questions?
No, I have none.
Thank you, Peter. That Tall Pine Bridge is gonna, as you know, from having heard it talked about for a year now, 6 to 9 months. We're hoping it goes quicker than that, more quickly than that, but there's no way to know. It's not a town contract, it's as I recall, a state contract.
It's actually a contract between the town and the contractor, but it's administered by the
Administered by
state,
the state.
funded by the by the Federal Highway
Yes.
Administration.
Thanks. Town attorney?
I don't have anything to report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep mine fairly brief. Want to remind everyone that we have an election on November the 3rd. That's a Tuesday. I want to encourage all of you to go to the polls and vote. Would certainly encourage that. And would remind you that the council meeting for that day will be moved to that next Wednesday, the 4th of November. Same time, same place, just one day later. After we adjourn the meeting this evening, a few of us are going to stick around, like Mr. Lahan, myself, and possibly one or two others, and just be available to answer your questions or to deal with any issues you may have. If we can't answer the question, we'll get our town manager involved in it or staff members involved in it. We would like to stick around for about 30 minutes after the meeting's over and just discuss things you may have a concern about. So I'm going to be here along with, I know for sure, Councilman Lahan. Jody?
I don't have anything else.
I have nothing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The only thing I just want to remind people of is the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. That's at the Nags Head event site. Starts at 6 o'clock that night. It's sponsored by the American Legion Post 26, Veterans of Foreign War Post 10950, the North Carolina Secretary of Transportation, and matter of fact, Mr. Nick Tennyson, who is that, will be the speaker there. So I would encourage everybody to come to that to honor the people we lost in that tragic event.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate you bringing that up. David?
Nothing.
Thank you. No further business? I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.